My name's Martin Beeby.
Yeah.
I work for Microsoft and I'm a sort of developer evangelist, which means that I go around the country speaking at events. I also blog and talk and get involved in projects to try and promote Microsoft and the web, and more specifically this year kind of focusing on Internet Explorer. Okay.
And what's your involvement with the Internet Explorer 6 campaign?
Well, we have a campaign, the IE6 Countdown, which is, well, the intention is to try and get everyone off of IE6. And it's a real big problem for us. I mean, the browser's over 10 years old. It causes web developers tons of problems. It means that they have to spend many hours trying to get things to work. I think we're in the UK at 2.7% market share for IE6, and we have a target of getting it down to 1%. And I'm kind of targeted to get it down to 1%. Is
that achievable?
That's absolutely achievable. In terms of like natural shrinkage, if we don't do anything as Microsoft, we would probably get there eventually. But by us being more proactive to get people off of IE6, then we can help a lot. And that proactive stuff is in somewhat like telling consumers to upgrade, but that's not generally where the real issues lie with IE6. The biggest problems with IE6 is the kind of enterprises which still use it.
Yeah.
And that's a real mixed problem and a real complicated issue to deal with. They might be on it for tons and tons of reasons which they have no control over, or it may be very expensive for them to move off of. We're talking some companies, big companies, it would cost them millions to move away from IE6. And Microsoft and the way that we're helping those companies move off IE6 is by getting resources into their companies and to try and move them. So we're working on really large-scale accounts to get them off of IE6, government agencies, that sort of thing.
Yeah. What about? Have you encountered anybody who just said, "No, we can't do it, and we're not going to do it"?
No, almost every. It's a sort of misconception. I don't think anyone on IE6 wants to be on IE6.
Yeah.
There's no one which is sort of going, we love it so much that we really want to stick with it. No one's getting a great web experience from IE6. It's all down to a technological reason, a dependency in their organisation on IE6. So it might have been an intranet system which is critical to their working, which was built at the turn of the century by someone which targeted IE6 features.
Yeah. And
if you change it off of that, then there's a big problem. And that is, it sounds like a really edge case, but it happens all the time. Big organisations get stuck with specific implementations and browsers.
So do you have, would you support an organisation which really didn't have the money to do it? Would it be manpower? Would it be financial?
Well, we're generally talking about the ones that we're sort of sending people into, or our services organisation at Microsoft is helping people. They are your big, recognisable brands which have big problems. In terms of helping support the little guy, it's not such a problem there. It's generally not massively expensive. There's still issues there, but it's through education and awareness, I think, that we can move those people.
Yeah.
But with the big enterprise clients, I think that's where Microsoft has the power to do something.
Yeah.
And they're really the big market share.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing to see Internet Explorer 6 does demise.
Yeah, since it goes under 1%, that means that developers can pretty much ignore it.
Yeah.
There will be seriously occasional sites which just have to.
Yeah.
But also the other thing is, if you think that you need to support IE6, question that assumption. Look at analytics on your website. Do you really need to support it? Because there's clearly some websites that do. I used to work in a large retailer which sold to government agencies. And we had to clearly do it because our IE6 percentage on our analytics was really high. But you know, if you look at the percentage share of IE6 on your website and it's below 1%, do you really need to support it anymore? And with WordPress, that's one of the great things that they've moved away from it in their admin system. I think it's a great move to encourage people to move away from IE6. Although I don't think people which are really using WordPress admin are really using IE6 still. No. I hope not. But I'm sure there's educations where they are.
Some cases, perhaps. What about IE10? What can we expect from it?
Well, it's easy for me to say more standard support. And we've said it before in browsers and not delivered.
Yeah.
With IE9 we did deliver more standard support. And with IE10 we're moving more and more towards a standard compliant browser. which supports modern HTML5, CSS3 and other sort of features and functions. So we're working really closely with W3C and all the other major browser manufacturers to make sure that we can deliver new things that web developers want. So the cool things that you can do in CSS3, if you want to know what's coming up in IE, just look at W3C and look what the standards are there. We're doing stuff like Canvas, so you can do animation. We've got web open font format, so you can use and embed any type of font you want on your site, but in a standard compliant way.
Yeah.
And the sort of cool, more edgier things like WebSockets or web workers. Web workers are really interesting, I think, which is where you are able as a developer to take really complicated JavaScript algorithms and offload them to a different process or a different portion of the process, so it doesn't interrupt the user experience. So you can do things in websites that you just previously couldn't.
Yeah.
So there's some really cool stuff coming in IE10, but in all modern browsers, there's some really cool things coming.
I read a tweet, someone had said developers will just always use Chrome. How can you know, my parents will have IE, Internet Explorer, Long 10, whatever. How do you target this kind of market of developers?
Yeah, you're right. A lot of people use Macs, so they can't ever use IE, and lots of developers use Chrome. The reason why developers use Chrome is today, Chrome's got a really great experience and developer experience, and it's had it for a while, when maybe developers were unhappy with our previous versions of IE. And when you're unhappy with the products, when you're unhappy with IE, it's easy to move to Firefox or Chrome.
Yeah.
Now we've improved our products a lot, but they're not unhappy with their browser. Why would they move back? And so for us, as an IE team, to get developers back, we need to improve our game. We need to improve our product. So that's what we're planning on doing with IE10 and future versions of IE. The only way you will get developers back is by improving the browser.
Yes.
You can't do it through hacking.
No. So can I just ask you a bit about Microsoft and WordPress? That you thanked WordPress in your speech. I've seen that happen a few times now. What do you think the two organisations are getting out of that relationship, Microsoft and WordPress?
Didn't I hear in the keynote something like WordPress websites make up something like 20% of all websites?
I think it's 12 to 14.
Well, I'm saying 20.
20, yeah. Okay.
I'm saying 20. Huge numbers, right?
Yeah.
That's what it means. That's why it's so amazing. And also the kind of people which use WordPress. It has a real bridge of taking people which are just users through to developers and get them involved in development. Our CEO, Steve Ballmer, once said rather famously, it's all about developers, developers, developers. And internally at Microsoft, it's all about developers. And developers are developing on WordPress. That's clear.
Yeah.
So if we want to talk to developers, we need to talk to WordPress developers. It's no good just concentrating on people building on Microsoft platforms. For us, what we want to see is Windows being a real viable option to host WordPress on. We want our next cloud platform, Azure, to be a place which is really a great place to host WordPress on, because ultimately we want people to use Windows.
Yeah. Because it doesn't seem like a natural marriage, a big corporation like Microsoft and then an open source platform like WordPress.
I mean, it's more. I agree, yeah. It makes sense though, if developers are using open source technology and we care about developers, then we have to care about open source technology.
Yeah.
It just follows. And to be honest, our involvement isn't just with WordPress. We have support for Joomla, Drupal, Umbraco, which is a .NET open source project. But I think, the way that we used to approach open source was very different than the way we do it today.
Yeah.
And I've been involved in open source. I've only worked for Microsoft for a year and a half. I was involved in open source before, and there's tons and tons of benefits of being involved in open source.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just the clear one of just seeing other people's code, being able to build on other people's experience. Why wouldn't a developer love open source?
So how do you think Microsoft's relationship with open source will develop in the future, say 5 years down the line?
Well, I wouldn't want to guess.
I know.
But I don't think that you can. It's no longer even a question. It used to be like an open source versus closed source, proprietary versus. I don't think that really stands up anymore, especially when you look at something like WordPress. It doesn't. I don't think it doesn't matter. It matters that there's developers which care about it. It doesn't matter what really license. For me, it doesn't. As a developer, I don't really care. I want people who are passionate about the web,
yeah,
passionate about development, to be using Windows if possible.